So good afternoon, panelists and everyone present today. So today, as the opposition side, I believe that our side is more realistic, human, and economically stable compared to the proposition. The proposition is thinking about the long term, meanwhile we as the opposition think about the short term and long term. While the proposition is to focus on the ideal environmental transition, they ignore the reality that millions of people today still heavily depend on the fossil fuels, subsidies for transportation, electricity, cooking gas, and daily survival panels. The problem is not simply remove the fossil fuel and replace it instantly. The real issue is whether society, especially in lower and middle income community, is actually ready to survive without their subsidy. So panels, our side understand that environmental transition must happen gradually, not to sudden abolition that risks the economic shock, rising level costs, inflation, unemployment, and public suffering. Therefore, panels, compared to the proposition that prioritizes ambitious transformation, our side prioritizes society stability, accessibility, and realistic transition for ordinary people before forcing large-scale change. So panels, I will respond to the mechanism and argument. So let us respond to their mechanism first. So they bring the three mechanism in this motion. So let me clarify the step-by-step their mechanism. So first, the proposition say they will create the public announcement to inform the society about the abolition about the fossil fuel subsidy. However, panels, this sound unrealistic because they act as the information can instantly reach the all area equally. In reality, many in rural and developed communities still have limited internet access, weak infrastructure, and lack direct government communication channel. Therefore, panels, public announcement alone did not guarantee readiness or understanding. Second, they argue they will educate the public about environmental friendly alternative. But panels, we agree education important, but we can see this is only work in the long-term solution. The issue is the short-term impact. Can poor the lower income community instantly adapt after the year of dependency of subsidy full? Of course not. Education cannot immediately solving rising transportation costs, electricity burden, or daily survival problem. Third, the proposition want to implement law and punishment to force the completion. This clearly shows that community many people still depend on the fossil fuel subsidy not because they reject environmental progress, but because they lack of economic capability to access alternative. Even worse, the proposition contradictive themselves. On the side, they admit society still need the education, but the other side, they are already prepared to punish people who not yet feel ready. So this is the mechanism they totally cannot justify. So let me respond to their argument. So they bring three arguments in this motion. So first one, principle justification argument. The proposition try to frame that motion is morally correct because fossil fuel damage the environment. However, panels, morality alone is not enough to justify harmful policy implementation. A policy must be also realistic, human, and economical stability. The proposition only focus the ideal environmental goal while they ignore the immediately suffering the transition may cause the ordinary people. Environmental progress should not come to the cost of social collapse and public hardship. Second, living conditions will improve the argument. The proposition claims that removing fossil fuel subsidy and redirecting them toward green alternative will improving living condition. But they completely ignore the short-term reality faced by lower income community. Many people still relying on the subsidy fuel and gas for transportation, and much more. Food and basic necessity will risk drastically. The proposition only talk about the future benefit, but the people suffering first about the poor and working class community today. This is why our side is more human and realistic. And lastly, reducing reliance on fossil fuel argument. Their proposition argue that countries should stop relying on fossil fuel industry and instead focus on environmental friendly technology. But panels, they fail to consider that fossil fuel industries currently support millions of job, business, transportation system, and national revenue. Abusively removing subsidy risks destabilizing economic sector that society still heavily depend on, and suddenly transition can create inflation, employment, and much more. The biggest flaw, the proposition is think they are long term while ignore the crucial in short term crucial. Our side does not reject environmental progress. What we reject is reckless the transition without the proper readiness. Compared to the proposition, our side better protect lower income. So this is why our side is more good than the proposition. So I bring two arguments in this motion. Its first argument is about the cruelty, the forced transition, and zero empathy for rural community. So our first argument about the cruelty. Why do we say the proposition lack of empathy? Because they assume everyone can immediately adapt to environmental friendly technology as if society has equal economic access, infrastructure, and much more. Many rural community we can see panels still heavily depend on the subsidy fossil fuel for transportation, farming equipment, and cooking gas. And daily survival, they do not reach environmental progress because they are anti-environment, but because they do not affordable alternative available. For example, how can the fishermen suddenly switch to electric technology when charging infrastructure barely exist in remote area? How can poor farmer buy expensive environmental? This is the logic we can see. This is where the proposition show the zero empathy. They only look the environmental ideal from a uber privileged perspective while ignoring the economic pain that will immediately hit the vulnerable community. So the biggest burden of this policy will not fall on the rich people panels. Wealthy individuals can still afford electric vehicles, solar technology, and much more. This means the proposition transition is not only economically harsh, but socially unfair because the poorest communities suffer. And then the impact we can see panels is this motion implemented abruptly. Rural community may face rising transportation costs and then expensive living necessity, reducing mobility, and much more. This signification and economic stability may also increase because the society feel abandonment during the transition. So this is why they do not can justify. So panels, our side is more human and realistic because we can see we prioritize protecting vulnerable community and maintaining social stability while transitioning responsibility rather than forcing emergency change without the empathy for those who are affected. So this is our first argument as the opposition panels. So let me go into my second argument as the opposition. Our second argument is about the domino effect on the inflation, economic instability that will happen in fossil fuel subsidy are suddenly abolished. Why this is dangerous panels? Because we can see fossil fuel subsidy are deeply connected to almost every sector in the economy. Fuel is not only used to private transportation but also for public transport, for food distribution, farming, fishing, and much more. When the fossil fuel subsidy are removed, fuel prices immediately rise, and fuel prices rise, transportation and production costs also increase. This is what we can see. Business then raise the price of goods and services to cover those higher operational costs. This creates a chain reaction across the economy. For example, farmer must pay more to transport corn, fishermen must spend more for boat, and then factory has higher operational and much more. So this is why we can justify this. The biggest problem is wage income do not rise as fast as inflation. This means lower and middle income community lose purchasing power while the cost of living continue increasing. The proposition only focus on environmental benefit in the future, but they ignore immediately economic challenge society must face in the short term. So panels, if this motion is implemented to society must experience inflation spike, employment, and much more. So therefore panels, our side more realistic because we understand that economic stability is essential before implementing the massive environmental transition, a transition that destroy affordability and create the inflammation harm. So in the end panels, our side clearly prove that our proposition that the proposition policy is too rash, unrealistic, and harmful for ordinary people. Through our argument we show how sudden abolition of fossil fuel subsidy lack of empathy to rural and lower income community. That's why panels, we need the panels to urge this motion. Thank you.